everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing wonderful. This video is going to be a long paint with me with my entire painting process. This honestly is my most asked for video, so here I am. First things first, let's go over my materials and get that out of the way. I am currently using Aquarello's watercolor paper. I believe this is the second time I'm using it. Unfortunately, I realized this paper is cold pressed after I opened the package and drew on it. Yeah, I clearly was not being observant that day, but since Blick said no to the return, here we are with some textured paper, and you know what? It's okay. We're gonna learn to love it. Moving on to paints. I mainly use gouache for all my painted pieces. I am currently using a limited palette Holbein gouache set. That was a mouthful. Gouache is a little finicky and dries more dull, so ideally I would like to add some more pre-mixed vibrant colors to this collection at some point. I also have luminous red, which is the color that I use for all my underpaintings, including this one right here, simply because it goes well with all the colors I use, and I love when you can see little pops of this color in the final piece. It's so yummy. But let's move on to the painting. So when I do my underpainting, I usually just make sure everything is covered and then go on to working out the shading, which I think it helps a little, but I don't know to what extent. Honestly, I am pretty new to underpainting consistently. The biggest reason I started doing it is because I started painting backgrounds. I know, I broke out of the portrait artist trope, and when you do backgrounds, it's kind of hard to cover every piece of the canvas, and even if only one little dot goes missed, I'd rather this pink show versus white. Honestly, it kind of adds to the painting. Like, I'd rather have some of the underpainting show at the end. But what I would say is it definitely helps you start the painting instead of just jumping right into color and color theory. And you'll see what I mean about that in a second. So for the sky, I tried to do this stippling effect. I don't know if that's the right word, but essentially I just went back and forth with a few different colors to give the illusion of clouds without actually painting clouds. Honestly, when you see it at the end, it actually turned out so good. Probably my favorite part of this piece. I tried to do a blue to purple to pink gradient, and if you look at this color I'm using and you're like, girl, that's not pink. That's a brownish gray. Yeah, it looked like that in person too. Not on the palette, but definitely on the paper. And that's what I mean about color theory. The underpainting changes the look of the color while you're painting. Once it's all covered, it doesn't have that much of an effect on it anymore, but it really makes you trust yourself and your color mixing abilities. And you tend to paint not just visually, but with your knowledge. And I think this is really important to practice as an artist who doesn't have very much experience in color theory, because when you paint on a white background, the colors tend to look how they would on the palette, but they will look different when the entire painting is filled. So I don't think we should completely trust what we see all the time, but that's just my experience. I would love to hear your thoughts on this because color theory is a doozy. Okay, this water, guys, it was the bane of my existence. So like I said previously, I just started backgrounds, and with that comes a whole slew of things I've never painted before, water being one of those things. To be completely transparent, for all of my paintings to have backgrounds and a lot of dynamic features, I designed the whole thing on Procreate. Like, I pretty much make an entire art piece digitally before painting, and this helps me choose colors and composition and play with parts of the piece. And I didn't spend nearly as much time on this one versus what I usually do. At some point I would like to trust myself completely and just jump right into the painting without any pre-plan, and I think this is a good first step towards that. I don't think I'm nearly ready to just jump into paintings. You can see I was going back and forth on a few things. For example, like right here, I didn't like how one-dimensional the water was turning out, so I thought I would just try painting some waves. It just wasn't working out for me, and also it felt like I was forcing it, and that is not what I want. This is probably one of those things I would have done digitally and thrown out, but since it was the actual painting, I pretty much had to repaint the entire water again, and it pretty much turned out like how it originally looked. I think the water is still my least favorite part of this piece, but it allows your attention to be drawn to the elements that actually matter, so I think I'm fine with it. Or at least I'm telling myself that. Okay, going back to the sky, you will see throughout the clips the pink actually looking like pink. Although I added dimension to the sky, I used the same color mixture as I did beforehand, and it looked much different as the underpainting is being covered, and this is a really good example of trusting the process. Although color theory is exhausting, it is definitely one of the coolest elements to creating art, and I feel like that is the direction I want to go into next, delving into into exploring color. I think at every stage of being an artist, you will look at others' art that you deem as a role model in a way, and you find certain elements so inspiring and motivating, and you just want to be at that point. I think we can all relate to being a beginner artist, seeing anatomically correct faces and thinking it's so cool, and once you figure it out, you move on to the next thing. For me right now, it's color theory for sure, seeing these amazing artists using color in the most extreme and interesting ways. So yeah, that is definitely next on our to-do list. Okay, so now we are moving on to the details of this piece, and I think it is a good time to talk about what this painting actually means to me. If you have been watching my videos recently, I am currently creating a series of paintings representing revisiting our girlhood and mourning our childhood, and with that comes existential dread. Yeah, I said it. I will not be going into this topic any further if you're worried about that, but instead we'll be talking about, do you actually need a meaning behind your paintings? I hear talk about this topic all the time, whether you need meaning or does meaning add value to your painting. I'm just going to talk about my thoughts and my experience, because honestly I've struggled with this when I was a baby artist, and what I have come to terms with is that art inherently has meaning, even if it's just for fun or if it's super cute or doesn't seem that deep, because you create things that you love and the intention of expressing yourself, and if you stay true to who you are as an artist, you will always make meaningful art. I think art is for everyone, even if you can barely draw a stick figure, because humans are meant to create. It's not a coincidence. We collectively feel more relaxed while creating art. Art is great. Recently, I've been painting with the intention of expressing a certain feeling or thought. This has not always been the case, and I don't think these pieces inherently are worth more. They just portray a specific story. And also, I am just very passionate about this topic right now, which is why I'm creating a series of art pieces, and I think this is actually the first time I've ever done this. So far it's been quite fun, but I don't think it should be forced. Like, after I'm done, I probably will move on to more fun pieces or practice pieces until I am re-inspired by something else. These are just my thoughts. They probably will change at some point, but let me know your thoughts. Okay, having a chatty video is intense. Like, I don't think I've talked this much ever, but we keep going. Honestly, I'm running out of things to talk about, so I asked you guys on Instagram for questions about life and art, so I will just chat about that. First question, tips for painting faces. The boring tip I have is to learn anatomy and proportions, of course. I know not everyone is painting realistically, but it is important to understand the face before you are able to distort it or stylize it in any way, if that makes sense. I do want to clarify that if you don't know anatomy, I wouldn't let that stop you from creating, just learn in the background. But boring tip aside, I will give you some tips on how I paint portraits. I think my painting style is more on the realism side of things, but it is definitely stylized. I think I would describe it as impressionism. I don't know. I don't know anything about art, okay? Anyway, first tip to painting like me or similar to me, think about faces and all its shadows and dimensions as shapes and not focus on the features like the eyes and the nose. Just forget about that and just block it off into shapes. This is definitely a learning process, but it will help you get away from tunnel visioning one detail like an eyeball, and you just can't stop tweaking it because it doesn't look right, and before you know, you spent an hour on one detail and it still looks bad somehow. We've all been there. Try to look at the piece as a whole and see how every brush stroke affects the entire painting. Also, if you're in this tunnel visioning hell, just step away and take a break for a second. Next tip, start with the darkest to mid colors first and finish with the light colors. Breaking it down into tones will further allow you to disconnect from the details and look at shapes instead. Last tip, I love to add color into my portraits, especially unnatural color, and the way I do this is to choose a color palette beforehand. For example, let's take blue and orange, and then assign which color will take the light hues. For example, blue can be light and orange can be dark. So at the lightest point of the face, I will add a very saturated light pastel blue, and at the dark points, I will be using a vibrant burnt orange. And for the rest of the painting, I will kind of mix these two to create more natural colors. It's good to look at your reference to see what colors are currently present and just kind of distort it to the extreme for your painting. I have a lot more tips, but I will end here for this video. Next question. What is color theory other than something that breaks my brain? Girl, I don't know. I feel like I just dipped my toes into color theory and have a lot to learn still, but I do have some advice on how to start learning, because I feel like if you Google how to learn color theory, nothing feels approachable. So here is my attempt at approachable advice. I find that color theory is a journey, and you will understand the more and more you paint and mix colors and experiment. Also, when I say paint, I just mean any kind of medium that use color, like color pencil, digital art, oil pastels, really anything. But my advice to begin is actually just looking at the color wheel. Before you start a painting, you want to choose what color palette you want to use. Complementary and monochromatic is pretty well known, but there is also triadic, which is 3 colors evenly spaced, tertiadic, which is 4, and analogous, which is what this painting is, 3 colors right next to each other. So my advice is to think about the types of color combinations while choosing colors and pull out the color wheel. You can just Google the color wheel, but if you have an interactive one, that is great, like any drawing app. I'm sure there's places on the internet where you can get it for free, and just start experimenting. Color theory is one of those things that you cannot describe in words. Your brain just starts to understand the concept, which makes sense because, like color, you can't really describe it without using the name or pointing out something with that color in it. It's kind of interesting, but good luck out there. I think we have time for one last question. This is about life. Is it scary to live on your own as an adult? I have only lived alone once for like a year as an adult. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. As an introvert who grew up in the most extroverted environment possible, it was a reprieve. I like to be alone. I thrive being alone sometimes, but at the end of the day, humans are social creatures, so I do think that loneliness is bound to happen in this type of environment, but it's okay because if you have friendship and connection, all will be good and you will be fulfilled. So I know that it can be scary, but you will find yourself while also making lots of memories outside your house, which is great. If you are moving to a place where you don't know anyone, I highly recommend joining online communities. Like, there's a ton of Discord servers, lots of video games have communities, also checking out like local clubs. Everyone is there to make some friends, so it's the best environment for you to be in. But yeah, that's all I have. I will let you watch the rest of the video. Hi, it's like day 5 of working on this painting. I want it to be done by now, but after painting all day yesterday, I realized her arm is way too long for her body, so I have to go and fix that. There's something about this piece that I don't love, and maybe I just have to accept that this is not my favorite piece, and that is okay. Hopefully after I fix that, it will look better, so we'll see. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. If you want to check out more from me, I have my socials linked below, and I will also be launching my shop soon. So yeah, keep up to date if you want to buy some prints or stickers from me. But that is all I have for you, so I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye!